What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the second episode of the Jake C. Paulson podcast. Right now, we're in the midst of a two-part series. We are on part 2. It is 10 habits of highly influential leaders. Last week, we covered the first 5. So if you haven't seen that episode, that is the first episode that I put out. Go back. I would highly recommend and highly encourage you to go back and listen to those first 5. We talked about reading, exercise, scribing, self-affirmations, and planning. And there were hopefully some good visuals to help you get those concepts of the first 5. So if you haven't seen that one, I highly encourage you to go back and watch it. Give me some feedback in the comments. But today's episode, we're going to be talking about the next 5 of the 10 habits. And last week we started off with a quote. And so I thought we'd start off with another one. So this quote is by Jim Rohn, who's a professional speaker. He says, "Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems. Wish for more skills. Don't wish for less challenges. Wish for more wisdom. The major value in life is not what you get. The major value in life is what you become." The major value in life is not what you get. The major value in life is what you become. And he says, success is not to be pursued. It is to be attracted by the person you become. Again, he says, success is not to be pursued. It is to be attracted by the person that you become. So again, like we talked about last week, you are your habits. Whoever you are today is formed from all the habits that you've built over your lifespan. So we're going to be diving into the 10 habits that will help you become a more influential leader in your business, your personal life, and your community. So let's dive in. Again, last week we covered those first 5: reading, exercise, scribing, self-affirmations, and planning. We're going to take a little bit of a different approach to these ones this week. Number 6, challenge yourself alone. Challenge yourself alone. Jeffrey J. Fox wrote in his book, In How to Become a CEO, he wrote, which is essentially like 75 lessons to live by to become a CEO. And one of these rules in his book is to do something hard and lonely every day. Sounds kind of funny. Do something hard and alone and like lonely every day. But if you really, really think about it, it makes total sense. Because in reality, one way to build confidence is to do something that you know is difficult in the moment, but nobody was there to see it. Because that is where true self-confidence comes from, is really from you knowing that, hey, this is super challenging. Like, for me, it's running. And I know I talked about this last time, but for me, it's always been running. I mean, this morning I ran a 10K and it was with a bunch of other people. So I know how challenging it was. I actually got to like celebrate how hard it was at the end of the run. But when you're training for all of those miles, a mile a foot, step after step, all of those are alone. Like, I've talked to so many people that train for marathons, and they always talk about like the hardest runs are the night runs, because there's just nobody. And I'm sure a lot of you guys know David Goggins, but he always talks about this too. There's nobody out there. It's just you, yourself, and the road, the pavement, or the grass, or whatever you're running on. And that shows up in your daily life. That's why a lot of people do ice cold plunges. That's why people do saunas, because those are hard. Or the steam room. That's always hard after a workout. That's why people work out, because it's hard. And a lot of times, if you do it alone, nobody else is there to see it, and you just have this true self-confidence that just comes off of you like a confident person. And that's what people come to you, because now you're building influence with other people, and they'll actually take your word a lot more serious. So that's where the confidence comes from, is just challenging yourself alone. Again, that's a great book. I highly recommend How to Become a CEO. It's 75 points, and a lot of them are pretty funny, but they're pretty good. So that's essentially where everyone can become more confident and use it to be intentional with it. So that's number 6. Number 7, I hope we all heard about this one. This is the golden rule. Okay, it's the golden rule. My parents taught me this when I was very young. They said, do unto others as you wish they'd do unto you, which sounds like a simple cliche, but if we really think about it, sometimes we're not always in the right mindset to give everybody our best. And I know this because I work with people and every day, there's always at least 1 or 2 points every day where I'm just not in the right mindset. But I have to physically or consciously get myself into that mindset. And sometimes it's easy to give people your best. Sometimes it's kind of hard, honestly. Like I remember when I was young, I was like intentionally trying to get under my sibling's skin when I was younger. Terrible thing to do. Don't recommend it. But I just wanted to see how they would react, honestly. And those people I can see are some of the hardest people to actually use the golden rule on, because they're not doing it to you. So why would you do it to them, right? But I honestly think that sometimes those are the people that are the most beneficial to do it on and that need it the most. So obviously you guys have all heard this rule, but I actually read a study. So I got some feedback on the last podcast, and one of the tips of feedback was to put some studies in. So I put a couple studies in here, but I actually read a study from this health psychologist. She read the study. I watched her TED Talk, but she's a health psychologist from Stanford named Kelly McGonigal. She did a TED Talk in 2013 called How to Make Stress Your Friend. And she pretty much talked about a study that tracked 1,000 adults, and they asked the adults 2 questions. They asked the adults, number 1, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? And then they asked them question number 2, they followed it up with how much time have you spent helping friends, neighbors, and people in your community? So I asked them those 2 questions, and by looking at the next 5 years of death records, what they found was that all the major stressful experiences like financial difficulties or family crises, what they found was that it increased the death rate by 30%. But it didn't increase the death rate for everybody. It didn't increase it for everybody. The ones that spent time caring for others actually showed 0% increase in dying. 0%. So her conclusion to all her studies was that caring created resilience. Caring for others created resilience in yourself. So that's the golden rule. Obviously, super simple concept, not as easy to implement all the time. And it really does make a huge difference, especially for yourself. And so that's number 7. Number 8, smile. Number 8 is a super simple concept as well. It's just smiling. And it's contagious. I'm sure some of you guys have realized that if you go out in public and you smile at people, a lot of the times they will smile back at you. It's this funny thing. But honestly, don't overkill this too, because I've seen some people overkill this to where you don't want to come off as a robot. I work in sales, and I've seen people overkill the smile, or seen other people treat you with the overkilled smile, and you're just like, this is just not real. I could tell this ain't real. Something behind that smile tells me there's something ain't real. So don't be an AI. Don't be a robot. Okay, don't overkill this one. But I also watched another TED Talk on this. In 2011, his name's Ron Gulna. He did a TED Talk called The Hidden Power of Smiling, which he mentioned a couple studies in there that were kind of fascinating. One was, it was done by Wayne State, and they studied pre-1950s baseball cards, so MLB baseball cards. They studied their pictures, and prior to the 1950s, the ones that didn't smile, on average, lived to be 73 years, compared to the ones that did, on average, lived to be 80 years old. Kind of a funny study, but that was a real study that they did, and that's what they came out with. And the other study was a study done by Penn State, and they found that not only does smile increase your self-esteem and your cortisol levels, which helps you relieve stress, you actually appear to be more likable and more competent in the eyes of other people. So you're more competent to other people if you smile more, which is kind of funny too. It's like, that's how you build influence around you, right? Is coming off as a competent, positive person, and that's what you do when you smile. So there's some actual research that goes into this, but there are some people that it's kind of tough to smile all the time. And I don't smile all the time, of course, but I mean, and I'm sure influential leaders, highly influential leaders, don't smile all the time as well. It's not a constant smile, but you do smile to attract others, I guess. And some people, it's really hard to smile. I can think back to when I was a kid. I really just didn't, every family function, I would smile with no teeth. Be like that, you know? And now I just found it easier to smile because one way that I do it, and a bunch of people do it a different way, but this is the way I do it, is I try to just make myself laugh. I think of funny stories like you had to be there stories, like inside jokes. I think of those. And for some reason, those stories that I have from back when, they just make me smile. They just make me laugh. Or just silly things that I do during the day, you know, random things that make me laugh. One thing that I actually do, and I think this is kind of ridiculous, but when I'm running, I will be running on the street and I will like smile and wave to a car that is just like, kind of like, look, I can tell they're looking at me. And the way it makes me laugh and smile while I'm running is just because I just think, what are they thinking in that car? They're probably thinking, who the heck is this guy? It's 50 degrees outside. He's smiling and waving, and he looks like he's like tired from running. And that's what, for some reason, that helps me keep going with when I'm running. Puts me in a better attitude, which helps me smile. And I do that same thing when I'm working. Or I do that same thing when I'm on this podcast. You know, I don't take myself too serious, but I take the job serious. So anyways, those are all just tips on how to smile, I guess. But yeah, it makes me laugh, and I think in turn is contagious. It makes other people laugh. So that's number 8, smile. Number 9, this one's pretty neat. Peace of mind time. Okay? Peace of mind time. This is essentially finding time to dedicate to yourself every day. Finding time to dedicate to yourself, being selfish every single day. And I know some of us have very unselfish jobs where whether you work with people, you work with, honestly, just working with people. I mean, that's a very unselfish job because customer service or therapists or whatever it is, it's just like taking in all of this stuff, listening, or saying, you're right. Or like I can think of in customer service, the customer is always right. So you can't ever talk back. You can't ever let whatever it is, your emotion out on the job. You have to like shield it to yourself. And that is if you can't find a way to let that out, that's very, very unhealthy. So this whole concept of finding peace of mind time is really just helping you, I guess, to give you some framework, to give you a picture. One concept I use sometimes is a cup. Everybody has a metaphorical cup, right? And that cup is filled with patience, kindness, positivity. And as you deal with people in your life on a daily basis, every single day, you're pouring your cup into their cup. So you can think of yourself pouring your cup into this person's cup that needs it. And when you see those people that are driving down the road and they get road rage and they freak out on the way home from work or on the way to work, or those people that are just like having temper tantrums, and you're acting like a child right now. It's just because honestly, their cup is empty. They have nothing. And they're just overwhelmed. They haven't found time to be by themselves and actually like process their own thoughts. They've just been going. And when your cup's empty, it's very, very difficult to deal with everyday experiences. It's like accidentally hitting yourself in the face with something and just like freaking out. That's when your cup's empty. You got to go refill it. So I don't know. I can think of some ways that I do it. I will just go for a walk. Some people will do that. I know for instance, a lot of successful people talk about how they do their morning routines. Mark Wahlberg, if I remember right, his schedule is he goes to bed at 7 p.m. and he wakes up at 3 or 3:30 and goes and works out just because there's nobody awake. David Goggins, super extreme example, but runs like 14 miles at 4 in the morning just because there's nobody awake. And it's just time for him to be by himself, be with his own thoughts. If you keep trying to escape your own thoughts all the time, you're just pretty much trying to escape yourself. That's not a good habit to form. Another person, Rob Dyrdek, he talks about his habits, and he'll wake up at 4 in the morning and he'll do all of his work from 4 to 8 or whatever it is. Or he'll work out and then he'll do his work because, he's got children, he's got a family. It's chaotic. And so he needs that time in the morning to intentionally set aside. And I know what you're thinking. It's hard to find 30, like some of you guys might be thinking, hey, if you knew my life, you would suggest none of these habits because I can't even fit them into my schedule. How am I supposed to fit this stuff? And I know, life gets really, really busy. And in reality, a lot of these habits are really hard to find time for. But if you want to get better at some of these things, like finding peace of mind time or reading or, planning or exercising, you have to intentionally put it into your schedule. You have to intentionally put it in. And it just takes, you have to rearrange some priorities. That's why Mark Wahlberg gets up early in the morning. That's why Rob Dyrdek gets up super early in the morning. And they're both really, really successful because they put the time in to make it a priority so that all these other things, they can have their time and have their cup full for when they can actually deal with problems during the day. When they have very difficult things that are very hard to deal with, that's when they still have stuff left in the cup because they went off and they filled their cup up doing whatever they had to do. So that's number 9, finding some peace of mind time that highly influential leaders do so that they can constantly be giving and not run out of stuff to give from their cup, metaphorically. So that's number 9. Number 10, last but not least, this is probably the biggest one on the list, is they don't gossip. Highly influential leaders do not talk behind other people's backs. They just don't. They don't gossip. And if you really want to build influence with people, you keep your bad thoughts to yourself. Or whatever. Your thoughts that are... My parents always taught me, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. If you don't have anything nice to say, just don't say it at all. Because what's it going to do? It's only going to make things worse, or it's only going to lose influence with that person. And if you talk behind other people's backs, in front of people that you lead especially, then those people that you lead are eventually going to do what when you're not in the room? They're eventually going to talk bad about you when you're not in the room because you just set a standard for all the people that you go to work with or all your whole community that, hey, I talk bad about people behind their backs, but nobody ever talks bad about me, right? Behind my back. Well, actually, everybody's talking bad about you behind your back, and they're saying what you're saying to the other person. So it's a bad cycle to get into. And influential leaders do not get into that cycle. And of course, me being the one talking about this stuff, I struggle with this all the time. I struggle with it all the time. And I think everyone to a certain extent struggles with this, however good they are at this. And it's hard to keep it all in. So hopefully some of these habits are kind of like clicking into place. Having one habit relates to having a different habit, relating to having the other habit. So, but really, if you think about your life, like metaphorically, you have a curtain, right? And behind the curtain is what you're doing in private, what you're doing behind the people that you lead or your friends around you, your peers, or even your family. And behind the curtain, if that is not the same as in front of the curtain, eventually what's behind the curtain is going to come out in front of the curtain. Eventually. So that curtain, the more you can lift that curtain and make it so what's behind it, what was once behind it, is the same as what's in front of it, what you're showing everybody else, then that's when you're going to build so much confidence that you just have nothing to hide. And as it relates to gossip, a good way to think about this when you're having conversations is to just think about the person you're talking about and think about what would they say if they were in the room right now? Would I be saying the same thing that I'm saying if they were sitting right here? And if you wouldn't, and you wouldn't say it in front of them, don't say it at all. Don't say it at all. Just act like they're just in the room when you're talking about them. And that's just having good relationships with people, right? So those are it. These are the 10 habits of highly effective people. I hope this was very helpful. And again, they might seem like simple concepts like smiling or the golden rule. Obviously, we've always heard that ever since we were young. And if you haven't, now you have. But they're simple, but they're not easy. They're not easy to implement. So I challenge all of us to do a self-audit again on these 5 habits, on these 5 that we just covered today. Go back through timestamps and, look through them and how well you're actually doing on these 5. And be critical too. Also, a good humble thing to do is ask for feedback. Ask for feedback from one of your good friends or someone in your family or whoever. Ask for your spouse. Ask for feedback from them. It's going to hurt at first. You got to be prepared for it to hurt. But everybody has blind spots. Everybody has blind spots. And they're literally blind spots that you're like, no, that's not a problem with me. But everybody around you is thinking, oh, yeah, that's a major problem with them, but I feel like they know about it. And so they just keep it to themselves. And so if you actually ask for critical feedback from people and be humble about it, and you can take the criticism, then you may find it really, really beneficial to get feedback from some people. So I challenge you all to get some feedback from people around you, from your blind spots. And sometimes they're just really, really obvious. So the first step to getting better at these is noticing them yourself. The first step to getting better at any of these habits is really just noticing them. I've noticed that from one of the classes I'm doing. I'm actually doing an emotional intelligence class that I paid for. And really, it's really just more about accountability. And the homework is just noticing when you're doing these certain things. It's really just it. Making a journal note of when you are actually doing these things. Like you get feedback and then you journal when you notice it. And then after noticing it a ton, eventually you'll come to a point where you don't even notice it because you're doing it or you're not doing it. One of the two. So anyways, I hope this was helpful. Again, the whole idea behind starting this podcast was really just to add some value to people who are striving to be better, whether it's in their business or it's their leadership or it's their community. So seriously, I hope this stuff is helpful. I do want to end on a quote, but before I do, please give me some feedback. I'm trying to be humble about this stuff. Give me some feedback. If you know me personally, text me individually. And tell me, just give me some feedback on this constructive criticism. Not only what you liked about it, but give me some feedback on what I can be doing better, what you've seen other people do that you liked about theirs, and how I can implement that into mine. That helps me a ton, and it helps everybody else. So please give me some feedback. Also, could you go ahead and like it, leave a review on the Jake C. Paulson podcast page. That helps a ton. I think there's like 1 or 2 on there right now. So if you could, that helps a ton. But like I said, this is more for the community. So I appreciate all the feedback. I'm trying to get better myself. And I'll leave y'all with this quote. Again, it's by Jim Rohn. Such a great speaker. If you guys don't know who Jim Rohn is, it's R-O-H-N, Jim, R-O-H-N. Look him up. He's a great speaker, insanely good at speaking, very motivational too. But he states in his book that you should run the day or the day runs you. You should run the day or the day runs you. And it's hard to do that if you don't know how to hold yourself accountable. So that's why next week we're going to be talking about 4 really simple ways to hold yourself accountable. That's next week's. Stay tuned for that one. Let's get after it. I will see y'all in the next. Peace.